I didn't even think about going there because I knew it would cost me everything. And it did.
Yeah.
But life has never been better.
Yes. I have goosebumps as you say that. Kelly McCooeye is a certified life coach, and she calls herself the emotions coach because she helps female entrepreneurs uncover the hidden emotional blocks and limiting beliefs that are getting in the way of their business goals so that they can stop stopping themselves and build a business and personal life that they really love. I love that. That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already. Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen. On this podcast, we talk about self-love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, and more. Hi, I am your host, Celia Antonio, and I am a relationship and sexuality coach for ambitious women with a history of toxic relationships who desire to reconnect to their sensuality and who desire to feel worthy of receiving healthy love. I celebrate you for hitting play on today's episode. I hope that you find this very supportive and helpful. And if you could show some support to the podcast by hitting subscribe on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, wherever it is that you are listening to or watching this episode, it would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen in healthy relationships. And thank you so much, Kelly, for being here today. I'm very excited.
It's so fun. So fun to be here.
Yes. So I'm not sure if I updated you, but I know we've talked before about how with this podcast and with the work I do, I help ambitious women with a history of toxic relationships feel worthy of receiving healthy love. I've also been still doing that, but focusing on that chapter of it's post breakup, but you're not yet ready to date yet. And I know that you talk a lot about like getting over emotional barriers and all of that. So when I bring up the topic of breakups, what are some of the first things that come to mind for you that you think are important to talk about?
I think that the most vulnerable time after a breakup is when you think you're ready to date and you have no idea that you have so much going on inside because it's so much better than it was. So you think it's good. I remember after my divorce, I thought I was doing really well. And it's only looking back, like in my mind, I feel like I was just walking around covered in gore from my marriage. And I had no idea because it was just so much better than it was.
Yeah.
Because the first morning where I was in my new place after we separated, I sat on my couch and I turned on some quiet music and I sat there and I just started to weep. And I'm like, why am I crying? And then I realized it was just from relief because no one was there judging me.
Mm.
And so the relief and the change is so huge after you get out of a toxic relationship that you think you're doing really well. So then you're vulnerable, but you don't know it. I think that's the most dangerous part.
Yeah.
Because there's people out there looking for vulnerability.
I know. Yeah. I think what's also a piece there, which can be kind of triggering for some people to hear, is that that part is also vulnerable because we maybe have not taken the time yet to see how did I contribute to that toxic dynamic.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to see how our exes were toxic.
Yes.
Especially when it's, really bad. Obviously, a relationship with like severe abuse is different. But when it's so obvious to us how the other person is toxic, that can stop us from looking in the mirror and seeing what did I bring. And then if you jump back into dating too soon, it's inevitable that you're going to bring those same behaviors.
Right? Because you didn't leave yourself.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I mean, my background is with covert narcissism. So part of the process for me was understanding that some of what I went through was actually abusive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, understanding, okay, what brought me to the place where I got married when I was 18? What brought me to the place where that was the best decision that I could make was to marry that person when I was that old. And that was a big change for me because I had looked at it with such regret and just disgust that I had decided to do that when I was 18. Asking that question, if that was really the best that I could do, what happened that I was in the place where that was my best decision?
Mm-hmm.
And so then it switched it to compassion, compassion for me and for all the things that had formed me and the decisions that I had made up until then. And then compassion for the abuse that I had gone through, but also when there's compassion, there's room to explore. Okay, this was mine. I did this. These are the decisions that I made. So that was a big turning point for me.
Mm.
taking it taking it back responsibility, and like when you own it all, then you can take responsibility for what you've done, and you can understand the choices that you make with the situations you're in, but you're not responsible for other people's reactions either. I don't know, I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
wandering there.
I love that you turned that kind of like disgust for your past self into compassion. And I'm curious how you did that.
I have been building a relationship with this 18-year-old part of me.
I love that.
It started when I was like, when my marriage, the wheels were coming off and like in the middle of divorce and all of that. And we were in therapy, and I'm like, there's this 18-year-old part of me that is so angry.
Mm,
And I just start to listen to her. And then throughout that whole process and in relationships afterward, I just keep checking back with her. Okay, what do you think about this person? And how are you feeling right now? And it was just kind of a really good check in to go, okay, there parts of me are seeing things that I don't see just as I'm going along through my day. And then I started to do that more and more, checking with different parts of me
mm-hmm.
and building relationship and connection instead of trying to shut down the inner critic or whatever. I just turned and said, okay, this part of me is criticizing. What do you need? Why are you criticizing? What are you trying to protect me from? Asking those questions and building relationship instead of shutting things down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. I love that you bring this up about like there's like different parts of you, especially with your 18-year-old self, because I think a lot of people are familiar with things like inner child work, but you don't hear, I mean, I don't see it anywhere to talk about inner teenager work.
Yeah.
And even like inner 20-year-old, inner 30-year-old, inner 40-year-old, like whatever decades you've surpassed, inner, like you said, inner critic, but there's also inner cheerleader, there's
Yeah.
so many facets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Schwartz's book, No Bad Parts, was a big eye opener for me because I listened to it by accident. I was walking one day. I listened to music while I'm walking, and I didn't have my glasses on, and I just pressed what I thought was the next playlist, but it
Okay.
was Spotify recommending an audiobook. I'm like, what? But I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't figure it out. So I just kept walking and kept listening. Whoa. This guy's talking about what I have always done instinctively, having relationship and connection and conversation with different parts of myself because I just talk to myself. But
Same.
he just does. He's like has 40 years of experience in the research to back it up. I'm like, this is really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. It's fun.
Yeah. It's so cool to have those moments where you learn about something that's backed by research and you're like, "Oh, this is something I've been
Yeah,
doing." And I think that really points to how a lot of self-love and self-development stuff isn't about becoming a different person, it's about remembering
yeah, and
these things that
allowing.
are yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And kind of like going back to how we naturally were before all of the societal conditioning came in, just things that are innately natural.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then even like going back to the parts of ourselves that are stuck in that pain or whatever, and then asking the question after, like, releasing the emotion of it, what would you rather be? And the 11-year-old part of me that was so scared of judgment, wanting to be the pattern breaker, the pattern interrupter for other people. And the part of me that was like child trapped in fear, wanting to be compassion. And seeing those two parts of myself, pattern breaking and compassion, playing together in my mind. And I'm like, well, that's literally what I do when I'm working with clients. I'm helping them break patterns with compassion. And it just allowing more of me to be me by allowing them to go back to what they really want to do. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If there's anyone listening who's having a hard time with compassion, what advice would you give them?
The question that a therapist asked me years ago that just stopped me in my tracks was, what do you need? And it's such a simple question, but it's so fundamental. And we just don't stop. Because as a mom taking care of everyone else, no one ever asked me, what do you need? And I just broke when he asked me that question. But now it's like a regular thing, asking different parts of myself, what do you need? And
Yeah.
asking clients, what do you need in that? Instead of trying to avoid the emotion of it, just step right into it and ask, what do you need?
Yeah. I like to also see when I ask, what do I need? I like to see my body as, speaking of motherhood, I'm not a mom myself, but I've had many experiences where I've cared for babies as young as 4 months old. I love babies. And having had that experience for the first time in my 20s and realizing that a baby that is 4 months old has some of the same, like those needs that the baby has, doesn't go away as we get older.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with this question of what do I need, I like to take the perspective of my body is this infant that I have to take care of because it
Yes.
has all these needs that we still have from infancy.
Yes.
So that kind of like experience has helped me see like my body is my baby and like we have to take care of our bodies because it's the vessel that we get to experience all of life with.
Yeah. I think like when I first started doing this with clients, I was understanding in my own life and with them that it's so much easier to have compassion for a child.
Yeah.
So when you go back into a memory about something that happened when you were a child and just ask, what do you need? Is it just a hug? Do you just need to feel safe? Do you need a cozy blanket to curl up in? What is it that you need? Then it starts to build new pathways in your brain so that you can start to have compassion because you know it's you, but it's also a child.
Yeah.
So it starts to make it more familiar, more normal to have compassion for yourself. And as you just do that more and more, then it becomes normal in everyday life to have compassion for yourself.
Yes. And then when you grow that compassion for yourself, you can have more compassion for others.
Yes.
And that helps you move on from things like you mentioned earlier, I think you said covert narcissistic abuse. I've never talked about narcissism on this podcast. And I'm curious if you could speak to the difference between covert narcissism and narcissism. Like, what is the covert part?
Okay. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, so I'm not the authority, but in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
it's right there in the name. From what I've read, there are a number of different variations of narcissism. Covert narcissism, in my experience, is, well, everybody loved him. I used to call him the golden boy. Everybody just thought he was the nicest guy. But he was also very good at manipulating and making everyone feel sorry for him, which I never understood as a way of life. It's very odd to me, but because that's the last thing that I want is for people to feel sorry for me. But he's very good at making people feel sorry for him, making people feel like they're his best friend. But it was always all my fault. And it was my responsibility to clean up all the messes, physically and emotionally, no matter what happened. I was supposed to be there to take care of him. My needs didn't matter. Not
Mm-hmm.
only did they not matter, it was like anger making if I suggested that I had needs. So it was always about me being smaller, shutting down large parts of who I am to be able to take care of him and all of his expectations. And it wasn't ever spoken. That's the hardest part, I think, with covert narcissism, is that it's not spoken. When I started to read the book, The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist, I think it's Debbie.
Write that one down.
I'm trying to remember her name. I want to say Myers, but I don't think that's what it is. I don't have it on the top of my head. But I started to read her descriptions and I'm like, how does she know me? I mean, everything, like from like a kid's experience and my own experience to sex life. And I'm just like, how did she know?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, I wasn't making this up. Other people have the exact same experience. It was mind blowing to me because that's the thing. I thought it was all just me because that's exactly what he wanted me to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it took a long time because you think that you should be fine. Like, what's wrong with you? Everything looks fine. People are jealous of your life. Why? People ask, oh, what's it like to be married to him? Yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah. I'm so glad you got out of that.
Me too.
Yeah. How did you start to recognize that it was time to leave? Like, what were some of the telltale signs that you'd want to share here that for anyone listening could kind of like look out for in case?
It was never, for me, okay, part of it is just that I'm really stubborn. Part of it is that my background is very religious.
Okay.
So it wasn't just that I was in a relationship that was toxic. It was that my religious beliefs wouldn't allow me to leave. So I
Mm-hmm.
see I'm not saying all religious beliefs, but my religious beliefs were every bit as abusive
Yeah.
because that's what kept me where I was in a situation that was so harmful to me,
Mm.
where I had no power. Because if he was able to say, if you don't change, then I'm just going to leave. But I'm not allowed to say, I'll leave. I never have power in that situation.
Yeah.
There's always an imbalance of power. So when it got to the position where my body was breaking down and emotionally, I was seriously clinically depressed for many years. And a friend of mine was talking about her relationship, her dad's relationship that was breaking up. And he is older. And I just thought I would rather be dead than do this for another 25 years. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I would rather be dead. Not that I was suicidal, but that I would rather be dead than do that for another 25 years. And it just, as I thought about that over a few days after that conversation, it was just so clear to me that if I stayed, if my physical health didn't kill me, my mental health would.
Mm.
And it was just this visceral choice to live. I chose to live, and the only way that I could live was to leave. And it wasn't even me that brought up divorce. He brought it up. He made sure that everybody believed that it was me that was leaving. But my internal process was, I have to live, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the only way I can live.
Mm.
I mean, he was like a whole other conversation about divorce, and we had already separated by that point and stuff. But, you know, there's a lot going on in a divorce. So
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
trying to say that it was all just one thing is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So then a thing to look out for people listening would be asking yourself, do you want to do this for another 25 years? Like, is that worth it to you? Will you feel mentally healthy and happy? Will you live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that I've learned in that process is I get to decide. It's my life. Nobody gets to tell me how to live my life. Nobody else gets to live my life. And if this is the life that I get to live, I had better live it the way that I want to live it. And if it's not, I get to choose.
So you said that you were 18 when you got married. I'm curious, how old were you when you finally left?
47, I think I was.
That's a long
28 years.
time. That's a long time. Wow. Wow. What do you think are some of the unique things that we go through when we go through a breakup after age 30 versus before that? So I feel like 30 is the point in a woman's life where we start to feel a little bit more, I guess, like adult, or sometimes there's a narrative of, oh my gosh, I'm 30 or older and now I'm alone. It can be kind of scary.
Yeah. I
I know
was
for
all,
you, it might have been totally different because it was like, I need to live.
yeah, I don't know. 30 wasn't the milestone for me because
Okay.
I had 3 kids by the time I was 24.
Okay.
I know that for my daughter, 30 was a milestone,
Mm-hmm.
but my life was just very different. And I was already entering into perimenopause at that time too. And
Okay.
there's this thing that I can see so clearly from the other side of it that in younger years as a woman, especially, there are societal expectations that so much of our life is about fitting into those expectations. You get
Yeah.
married, you go to school, you have kids, the relation, all of it. It's these expectations that we're trying to fit into. And then you go through this thing where I don't know what happens with the hormones in our brain, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't care anymore. I don't need your expectations to fulfill me because I've never had them approval anyway. So clearly I don't
Yeah.
need it. This
Yeah.
is what I want to do.
Yeah. We don't get the approval no matter what
Oh,
we do.
exactly.
Yeah. We're
And
either to
then,
this or to that. And those two things are like opposites.
yeah. And then understanding that I can give myself the approval that I've been looking
Yeah.
for all my life it's so incredibly freeing
Mm,
that now it's like, well, this is the kind of relationship that I want, but I don't want this stuff in a relationship, and I'll just make it look like I want in a way if, we want if I'm in a relationship, but I get to choose.
mhm.
And I don't need to put a label on it. I don't need it to fit into any kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but that's I get to choose. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my daughter about relationships, and she's like, "Well, it doesn't really fit into this label, but sort of fits into this label." I'm like, "Well, what do you actually want? What does he want? Do they agree? So forget the label and just do what you want."
Yeah. And I think that doing what you want can, for a lot of women, be very tricky,
Yeah.
especially with what you just mentioned about most of our life is about trying to fit into societal expectations. And I feel like that maybe, I mean, you could probably speak to this, that might even be worse when you come from a religious community.
Yes.
Because,
Because I knew that it would cost me everything.
yeah,
I
yeah,
knew it long before it ever happened.
yeah,
I didn't even think about going there because I knew it would cost me everything. And it did.
yeah,
But life has never been better.
yes. I have goosebumps as you say that. It cost you everything, but life has never been better.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing with any big choice that you're making out of an act of self-love. It's scary to face it and it costs a lot, but the
Yeah.
payout is so big.
Yeah. But I don't think that we ever do. I don't think that we make those decisions because we're looking for the payout.
Yeah, we
I
don't.
didn't leave because
Yeah.
I wanted my life to look like it does now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like that thing. I don't know where it probably comes from psychology, but that people make decisions based on two things. They're either running towards like something that's pleasurable or they're running away from pain. So it's the running away from pain that like,
Yeah, I had no concept of what the pleasurable would even be.
yeah,
I didn't
that makes
know.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes total sense. That's why it's so mind-blowing after we go through something like that, when we start to experience healthier relationships for the first time, whether that's in romance or whether that's just in friendship, or whether you can notice how you're just able to be more present with your kids. And just like when you notice those shifts, you're like, I didn't know this existed.
right?
Like, I,
Thought part of me was broken. That was a big one for me.
yeah, a
Oh, I'm
big
not
one for
broken.
me was like, I didn't know men like this existed. Like
Right?
when I got into my first healthy relationship, I'm like, wait, what?
Uh-huh.
He cares about how I feel?
Work.
Which is so
Yeah.
sad to say out loud, because it's like,
So sad.
yeah, he should care about how you feel. But it's a part of our journeys. And
Yeah.
it's like you mentioned earlier, as we learn, the key is to have compassion for our past self and to not feel disgusted, and to realize that the younger version of us was doing the best she could with the tools she had at the time.
That when I listened to Brene Brown talk about that one day when I was driving, and I was just driving down the road, just tears streaming down. So I'm like, no, that can't be right.
Yeah.
That can't, it can't have been the best that I could do. But that's what forced me to look at the whole situation and then to step back and look at, if that was the best I could do, then how did
Yeah.
I get there? Yeah,
Yeah.
compassion.
So, what is possible in your life now because of all of these decisions?
Everything. I have learned to allow myself to feel instead of being stuck in the emotions, which means that I can allow my emotions to come and go like they're supposed to. I don't have to stay stuck in them, which means that I'm not afraid of my own emotion, because the worst that can happen in life is an emotion. Doesn't matter what it is, what the situation is, the worst of it is always the emotion. And when you know how to process emotion, then you don't have to be afraid of the emotions you might have if something goes badly, which means you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the respect and the gratitude that I have for past me in my face who risked everything to live, knowing that it was going to cost everything in order to set up life for me now, means that I'm working to set up my life for future me so that she'll look back at me now with gratitude.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's just constant. Every single day is better than the next. Yeah.
It means that I can just tap into this deep well of joy whenever I need to, instead of being lost. Yeah,
I also love this invitation to not be afraid of your emotions, because,
such a beautiful thing.
yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are kind of trained to label some emotions as bad or negative or low vibration, and then we avoid those.
We will do amazingly crazy things for an entire lifetime to avoid an
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah.
And when you understand that an emotion is just a vibration in your body, it just comes and then it's gone. If you actually stop and feel it, it's just an emotion.
Yeah, I think if you actually stop and feel it, it's an opportunity to kind of go back to equilibrium, you know?
I have this analogy. I actually just put together an ebook about it. Analogy that we go through life with unprocessed emotions as if they're untied shoelaces. And we trip constantly and we're falling and hurting ourselves and doing all kinds of damage to ourselves because we're always tripping over our shoelaces, and we develop these incredible ways to heal and cope with these shoelaces flapping around all over the place, thinking it's normal to have untied shoelaces, and we never just stop to tie our shoelaces. But when you understand how to process emotion, it takes like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not hard to do at all. Yeah. 5 steps, 3 minutes. There you go. Just
Yeah.
deal with it instead of tripping over it all the time.
It's a good metaphor. I would say it is hard, but it's simple to
Yes.
do. It's simple to do. It
Yeah.
is hard, but
It's
it's
hard
also
because
simple.
we're scared of it,
Yeah,
scared of our own emotion, because emotion says if you feel this, it's just going to
you're gonna
take over.
die.
I remember having this scream that felt like it was stuck in my throat in my 20s. It was like this scream, and I was sure that if I let it out, it would never stop. But that's what emotion does. It's like feels like it's going to take over. But once you get past that and just feel it, it's not that bad. It's just an
Mhm.
emotion. I went through a breakup after my divorce. I was in a relationship for 4 years. And it was like 2 weeks after we broke up that I just cried, and it would come in waves, and I just let it come and just let it be what it was. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, I'm good. Like there was still some things I worked through later, but for the most part, I wasn't lost in the pain anymore. I was good.
Mhm.
Not because I decided I didn't want to feel anymore, but because I had actually felt it.
Yeah, for sure. There was a time when I was 29 and I went through a breakup that like completely blindsided me. I thought I was with the person I was going to marry, and we had just moved to New York City. We'd been living there for I think about 6-ish months, maybe less, and he ended things. And just a few days later, I went to this class because I didn't want to cancel on my friend. Like I had made these plans before the breakup happened. I went to this class that was it was called a dynamic meditation. And I remember walking in that morning. It was like a freezing cold New York City, February, wintry morning. And this place was maybe 3 blocks from my apartment. And when I walked in, I was like, I am never going to be happy ever again. I remember having that thought. But in this dynamic meditation, we were doing things like breath work. We were encouraged to like flail around and scream. And it was basically a solid hour of exhausting, emotional kind of like release, but in a safe way. And at the end, I was like smiling from ear to ear, and it was genuine. And like that experience helped me realize that, all the pain wasn't gone. Like, yeah, I was still kind of like, I have no idea what I'm doing next in life. Like, here I am in New York City with no family,
Yeah,
and like, what? But
yeah,
at the same time, you can still access joy.
exactly. That's it. It's not that you stop feeling, it's that you're not stuck in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear it from people all the time. Well, I just want to stop feeling this. I'm like, well, you're human. You're not meant to stop feeling a certain emotion. You're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that taught me was the deeper you can allow yourself to feel the pain, the deeper you will actually feel the opposite emotions too,
Yes,
which is so
exactly.
interesting to me.
Yeah. There was this really clear moment after my divorce. I was driving down the road, and there was this fork in the road. I was like, okay, either I harden my heart and stay angry and just live like that to protect myself from the pain, or I choose to keep my heart open, knowing that I'm going to get hurt more. And I chose to keep my heart open. And it was just like, one of those things is like, it doesn't look like a big thing at the time, but it changes the trajectory of where you're going.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this conversation.
I'm always like, okay, I don't know all the fad words and the philosophies that are going on at the time because I just don't keep up with all of that. I
Yeah.
just understand me and I understand people
Yeah.
and I just have conversation. Like
Yeah.
just be real. I don't care if it's a certain kind of energy or a certain kind of I don't care. Just tell me what you need.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. I'm like, what are the fad words for?
Oh
I'm
no.
like, I don't know them either.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite practices to allow yourself to feel the full spectrum? and to access anything and everything.
I did this thing about meditation a few years ago. What's his name? Vishen Lakiani with Mind Valley, about learning to meditate, not in an like the traditional kind of meditation, but to bring yourself into alpha level brainwaves.
What is that? Now you're using fad words.
Alpha level brainwaves is like when you're kind of drifting to sleep or drifting awake.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I I did the process where I just I just put my fingers together and it's connected like it's a cue to my brain to go into that. And sometimes I just need to count down, but
Okay.
not that that's anything specific. That's just the cue that I've taught my brain to
Gotcha.
go there. So that, like, if I count down backwards or imagine I'm walking down a stairs, I'm kind of self hypnotizing myself. And then that's where I go to just talk to myself, talk to parts of myself, check in with what's going on. And then I also do mind shifting, which is the modality that I use with clients where it's like a series of questions, 7 questions, where the first questions are bringing up the subconscious emotions into the consciousness. And then the next questions are about possibilities. So, what needs to happen for this to not be a problem? What would you rather
Mm.
feel? So, you're going back and forth, and it between releasing the subconscious emotion and thinking of possibilities, and that process just gets your brain unstuck. It's the wildest thing. I often feel like when I've done a session, like when it's on me, I've done like 3 years of therapy in an hour because it's so deep. It just
Yes.
like whoa. But yeah, when you get used to doing that, asking what needs to happen for this to not be a problem, you start thinking in possibilities, and you can go really fast to thinking outside of the problem. And when I say problem, I mean a situation that you have emotional resistance to. So um, if I am planning to go get groceries today, I don't have emotional resistance to that. If I say I'm going to make $10,000 this month, I have some emotional resistance to that. It releases the emotional resistance to the situation so that it's just a situation, it's just a thing. And then you can see it differently.
Mm.
Because if you're going to get groceries and there's a roadblock and you don't have emotional buy-in to having to drive on that road to get groceries, then you find a different route.
Mm.
So
Mm.
then it's just a thing. You just think differently, think in possibilities. I think that like when we're listening to people teach and stuff, it's not so much that they are giving us knowledge, they're giving us possibilities,
Yeah, that's
just
true.
opening our brain. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, yeah. I asked you, I don't really remember what question I asked you, but it was something with like, what are your favorite things to feel everything, right?
Oh, the modalities that I use or the process that I use to feel, yeah, I meditate a lot in that way.
Yeah.
I also do that when I'm waking up in the middle of the night and having trouble getting back to sleep.
Yeah. I
But
think meditation is definitely a foundational piece to
yes,
something like feeling your emotions because when you're meditating, you're practicing noticing what's
yeah,
happening inside. And you're also grounding yourself, and that grounding
yeah,
creates a lot of safety to
yeah,
be able to go into those emotions that you tend to resist without it kind of escalating to a place where it's too much.
yes,
Does that make sense, what I'm
yes,
saying? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely the foundation, but I feel like a lot of people have resistance to practicing meditation and mindfulness
Yeah,
daily, daily. Like I will always advocate it's much better to meditate or do breath work or do some sort of mindfulness practice for 1 minute every single day than to do it once a week for 30 minutes because I think the
yeah,
daily repetition is what makes it a habit off of your meditation cushion.
yes,
And
totally.
that's what you want. You want like you want it to become a habit that you take into
Yeah,
your life.
yeah. It's a relationship that you build. And if
Exactly.
you spend a week with someone and not go back to it, or you spend a couple of minutes every day connecting with them instead, you build a relationship long term if you're connecting with them in a little bit at a time. Yeah.
Okay, so there are a couple questions that I ask each guest, and I think now would be a good time to bring those up. The first one is, what does self-love mean to you?
Connection, always connection, relationship with myself, in the sense that I'm talking to myself, asking what do I need, allowing myself to feel what I feel. Relationships, in the same way that when I have these two friends that we meet every week on Zoom because they don't live close to me, but I've known them for 30 years, and we just talk about whatever is going on, and we allow each other to be where we are. There's no agenda, we're just allowing each other to be, and we talk about interior design and the books we're reading and our relationships and the deepest, darkest fears, like everything. We just talk. It's just relationship. And it's the same with me, just allowing myself to have that relationship connection.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, we're so lucky to have video calls
Yes,
as
changed
something that's
everything.
like so accessible. I know Skype was
Yes,
around for a while, but Zoom and Google Meet and all the other things are like a lot more
yeah,
easy to use.
yes.
Yeah. What makes you feel the most grounded?
I think when I allow myself to feel, especially when I'm listening to music, and just walk and listen to music and feel and just yeah, be in the world, take up space. I walk a lot and listen to music.
It's a good practice. Yeah. It can be meditative, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. The next question is, what is your favorite part about being a woman?
I can't imagine being not a woman.
I know, right? It's a pretty
Take me a minute to get my head around that.
weird question.
I love the relationships that I have. The I really deep relationships with women is my normal and always has been. And men struggle with that so much because they're so conditioned to not talk about their emotions that they struggle with going deep. And that just it seems so sad to me because they just miss it. But I think a lot of men go into relationships simply because we allow them to explore those parts of themselves if they're willing to go there or to be soft. But I mean, I have a slightly mischievous personality. I get into all kinds of trouble that I can get away with because I'm a woman. I don't know if that's a good thing, but
Oh my gosh, I love it.
yeah.
Why do you think that you can get away with it because of being a woman?
Um, because they just think I don't know, they think that I'm just being cute or harmless. I'm thinking circles around them. I don't know. Yeah.
So, for people that have tuned in to this episode, I would love to pass the mic to you to talk more about your work and who you serve, what you do, and where people can connect with you.
I help ambitious female entrepreneurs who are doing all the things, building their business, their lives, and still carrying those weights from the past. And the weights are holding them back. And I am constantly curious about what they could do if they didn't have those weights holding them. So I help them with a combination of intuitive coaching and mind shifting to clear those weights and to go into the traumatic memories and the beliefs and identities that were formed so long ago and just untie the weights that are holding them back so that they can be who they were meant to be, so that they can just own their lives and take their power back. I'm really focused on helping women take their power back. So, yeah, my website is therewiredlife.com. I do one-on-one coaching, and I'm working on some digital courses that aren't yet out yet, but yeah. But one-on-one is my thing. I really love that, connecting with people and just walking through those deep things with people to create a safe space for people to be who they are, to just let down the walls, the expectations, the judgments, and just be and get to know themselves.
And are you on social media?
Yeah, I am on Facebook, mostly on Facebook, really. It's Kelly E. McCooey. I'm on Instagram, which is Rewired Life Coach. Yeah. Um, and my website. Yeah.
Cool. I will include all those links in the
Yeah.
show notes and the caption. Thank you so much.